All right, hello, everyone. Welcome to I guess, fireside chat with Gauss Algorithmic. My name's Alex. I handle the content here, and I'll be chatting with Johnny, the CEO of the company. How you doing, Johnny?
I'm good, good. Great to be here. Great to meet everyone.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So, one thing we really wanted to cover is, as the person doing content, I personally know we've been changing what we've been posting. So I'm going to pretend like I don't know and throw it to you.
right.
Why are we doing different content? I see a lot of like gaming stuff. Like, are we a gaming company now? What's going on?
Yeah, uh, what we do, our heart has always been kind of in research, right? So at the end of the day, we do a lot of experimentations on ourselves, right? But this is a strategic move, I would say, in certain focus areas that we're very interested in, right? And as you mentioned, the gaming industry is kind of the first that we know we're starting. We're focusing there a bit more. We think there's a very big opportunity for us there, right? Um, for those who don't know what we do, is that we help companies like adopt and implement technologies around the umbrella name of artificial intelligence, right? Which you know is a glorified name for practically machine learning today.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of industries, and as this is a very widespread topic, I felt that we needed to have a look at places where we can really help and really have an impact, right? And gaming is one of them, right? So for those who don't know gaming, I mean, it's a pretty big industry, right? So really in the billions of dollars annually, right? Depending, and it's a growing market, not in the sense of massive year on year growth, right? But in the sense of different formats and different ways you can do gaming today, right? So you got consoles, you got mobile devices, right? You go all sorts of other methods, right, to try and let's say fully online gaming within the browser. So there's a lot of stuff happening there, and
So,
we
so it's
think
almost
that
like it's a business
yeah.
decision, not just because we're a bunch of gamers or something.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, it's key. It's key for us to um, it's a lot about efficiency, right? At the end of the day, right? So what does machine learning do at the end of the day? It helps you make decisions, or it helps you automate some rigid tasks, right? So these are kind of like the key areas where machine learning has been successful, and um, we see a lot of opportunity there. To help out, right? So why not jump in?
Yeah, and so when I think people hear AI in gaming, they
Mm.
typically think of like the computer-controlled characters. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, we had a look at that, right? But that's not very interesting for us, right? And companies like DeepMind, even challenge, like the top gamers of the world, and they've been pretty successful. I think, in Dota 2, they were like 99% for win rate, right? Which
Yeah,
which is crazy.
and they
Um,
conquered StarCraft 2, and then I guess Go. I've never played Go, but I'm guessing it's pretty complicated. So that's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
incredible.
Well,
Yeah,
it's and these are especially good tasks for a machine to do, right? Because you basically we know, especially with advancements in reinforcement learning, you can create a pretty good and pretty intelligent agent, which can play the game well, and they're pushing the boundaries there, right? So what struck me with Dota is that they were also capable of winning a 5v5 competitive match, right? Which is a bit different than just playing Go against Grandmaster, right? So but back to your question, I don't think that's our place there, right? Where I see opportunity is the actual development process of the games, right? So I think everyone can imagine, how much money and time it takes to create a computer game, especially what we call the AAA computer games, right? So those ones that are striving for more realism within the game, and there are certain parts of the development process which take a lot of time, and it's a lot of manual labor of professionals, right? Which we think can be very well simulated by machine.
Yeah, and so for people who don't know, AAA games would be games by the biggest developers for like the highest budgets, right? So like some of the games now, I think Cyberpunk set the record as like the most expensive game ever made, and I think it was more expensive to make than the Avengers Endgame movie, right? So
Yeah,
these modern games are becoming as expensive to make as the biggest blockbuster movies, right? And so
yeah.
yeah, and so they kind of have a ranking system of how big a game is, and AAA would be these huge blockbuster games.
Precisely. And it's a massive amount. It's like, it's going into the hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So,
Yeah,
on
yeah,
average,
yep.
I read some $80 million is the average uh, game development cost in this rank, right? So,
Yeah.
if you can reduce the amount of effort to create a game and not degrade the quality, you're in a good market.
Right. So, like, what are some of the aspects of game development that can be either automated or at least assisted with machine learning?
Yeah, I'm especially intrigued in looking at the content development process, right? So various ways that content is created, right? You can talk about motion capture, you can talk about the world design automation. I don't think there's like a specific name of of that
Maybe
of that
procedural
process.
design or procedural
Procedural
generation.
design, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, or the process of character speech. There's a lot of things in that process, but we're also looking at things like, because if you look at esports and the popularity of that, and competitive online gaming, then there are also opportunities there for machine learning to shine, like, detecting cheaters, right, is a big thing, right? And uh, it it uh, it really helps build trust between the gamers and the publisher, and esports as such has now hundreds of millions of viewers, right? So when you're on that sort of level of viewing, then there's advertising is massive money into that, right? So trust, branding are very important facts, and cheaters go against that.
Hmm. And so for motion capture, like I know we've seen a lot of motion capture on our channel now. Can we dive a little bit into that? Like, how exactly does machine learning contribute to that or help with that?
Well, the motion capture process is the process where you have practically uh, actors, professional actors who run certain elements of the scene, which is needed for the game. Right, at the end of the day, um, this involves, there are different sort of methodologies, right? I mean, kind of the latest and greatest, and that's been showboated about is FIFA 22, or what a system works they're calling hypermotion, which is, from what I understood, a combination of sensoric capture and video capture, right? Probably the most used type of capture is optical capture, which very simply said is using multiple cameras to track points which are clearly visible on the actor. So you see these actors in these kind of funny suits with small plastic balls on them,
Yeah.
and the challenge with this process is, one thing, it takes a lot of time to do all the scenes, right? It costs a lot of money to bring all sorts of actors in, but it's not a perfect process, right? So if you imagine you're playing football, if we're talking to Americans, soccer, I had to put that out. Always wanted to try that.
Yeah, it worked. It went well. Yeah, no, it was really good.
So there you have situations where the markers are hidden from the cameras, right? Because you got the ball on your feet, you know you're in the way of maybe a competitor, um, and those are like really small split seconds within the animation, right? Where these markers disappear, for example, or the system as such misunderstands the position of the marker or the signing of the marker. So he thinks your left elbow is your right elbow, so he turns the whole body around and all these sort of things, right? And um, some go noticed, right? So very simply, they redo the animation again, but some go unnoticed, and then in the post production process or in the process of handing over. For, let's say, the further rendering team, so the graphics people who take the skeleton and put the rendering graphics on top of that, then there have to be a lot of corrections done, right? And really, animators sit down at all those scenes and manually try to figure out where that position of that marker should be, what happened. They try to basically reconstruct again that problem, and as there are very small sections of that in the animation process, you can have like hundreds of these errors throughout, let's say, many of the animation scenes. So it's a lot of time which is just spent doing that, right? So that's an area where we think that uh, their work can be practically simulated by a machine learning process, right? So by machine learning application.
And is that so? I'm guessing that anytime you have like a repetitive, boring task, it makes it kind of easier to automate. Is it going to cut off much money from the budget? Like how much are we talking here? Is it going to be pretty interesting for companies?
Well, I'm pretty sure it will yearly save maybe a couple of people, right? In terms of, let's say, development time. Um, so one thing is being efficient, but you also reduce the amount of time it takes, right? And considering the discussions we've had with some gaming developers, then um, release deadlines for games are pretty strict, and the last thing you
Yeah,
want is to tell eager gamers who are waiting for your game that you're going to have a delay, right?
yeah. And so we mentioned that you said the FIFA system has multiple types of motion capture. We talked about optical, which is like light and cameras. Do they have any kind of like I don't know if you know anything about it or not, so I won't dive too deeply into that.
Right.
But can machine learning help with other types of motion capture besides just optical? Can it do anything with inertial or the markerless type of capture?
Yeah. I presume there will be, small mistakes, right? Because if you imagine, especially with competitive sports, and you have suits on yourself, right? So the markers will move, because your suit is moving, so there'll be these, small inefficiency and errors. And within, especially that FIFA game, as I understood, they are using some form of machine learning to fix those errors, right?
Hmm.
So it's I think they recognize that this technology is valuable in that process, because now you're mixing a couple of stuff and you somehow need to put it together, right? But I think what's more interesting is the motivation behind why they did it, right? So uh, these games, they want the feeling of the game to be as realistic as possible, right? So in football. Uh, I think it's a very different motion if you do it if you like kind of simulate the play compared to the fact that you're actually playing, right? Because that you're going to pass the player, for example, because you agreed upon that with the actors agreed upon that, even when they bring in the professionals, right? So Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo all have been uh, involved in the motion capture process in the previous games, but it's simulated, right? So they agree upon that he's going to go do a dribble on the right, and kick the ball forward and stuff like that. So the idea which they had now is, to get the, real movement and or the natural movement and the natural motions out of the game. They just had a normal 11v11 game and tried to motion capture that, right? And I think that's a very difficult task in itself. But at the same time, the value which you can take out of that, and especially in a game where every year they put out a new version, and you're trying to constantly think of what to do next, right? What's the next big thing? Can we make the grass more realistic? Can we make So I think they've tried all sorts of things there, and this could be, I think, a game changer. So I'm buying FIFA 22, and let's see what comes out of it.
Perfect. And so, for example, if they pay big bucks to get Lionel Messi there, they record some shots, and then they realize in post production or later down the road that, oh, actually we're missing this key movement, or like actually the marker wasn't in the right place. Is the technology there yet where they can actually take the previous video and kind of like work out what the motion would look like based on machine learning or deep learning or anything like that?
Well, from the way I understood it, is there's not much out there. Well, practically nothing I've heard of that would currently deal with this problem, right? So, if the marker goes missing, it's practically up to the animator, or if there's any sort of other mistakes, then it's practically up to the animator to correctly reconstruct that. And people can as kind of the physique of the human body, then
Sure.
you can play around with it, make it look as natural as possible, but it will take a bit of time.
Yeah, I imagine there's some financial incentives to not have to fly him back out.
Oh, by all
Yeah.
means. I mean, he's not there for for free.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
guarantee you that.
And how close are we from being able to take a football match from the TV, or excuse me, telly, as the UK English
Right.
might say?
In the English lingo, yeah.
How close are we from being able to just take it from broadcast games and kind of pull that motion out? Are we there yet with
Well,
the technology?
I would say, not yet, but we're there with the well. So machine learning, in the essence, is providing data to an algorithm where he would constantly kind of learn and improve during the process, right? So with that said, it's important to have the right data, right? So I think the biggest challenge right now is taking all of these sorts of animations, right, which have been made, and saying, okay, this has been done well, this has been done badly because there's an issue here, and try to kind of label that, mark that, and it's going to be tons of work, right? In essence. But I would say the ultimate goal is then to have a sort of package where you wouldn't need, you know, even optical recognition, right? So there are studies which are out there today which are looking at possibilities of markerless motion capture, for example, right? And I think that's kind of the holy grail uh, in this specific area, where machine learning would make a massive difference, right? Because it will enable to do good motion capture at a lot lower cost, right? Which can suddenly help studios who don't have that equipment, who don't have those possibilities to create a AAA game at a reasonable price, right? So this is where I think it should eventually go, right? And another interesting area, which I'm particularly I particularly think it's going to be also game changing, is reuse of animations, right? Um, Typically there's already been a lot of animation captured, or a lot of motion captured, and it's difficult to reuse, right? At the end of the day, because you don't have those scenes um, correctly labeled, and you can't. It takes a lot of time to extract that. So you will have a scene where someone walks into the door, sits on a chair, talks to someone, and that's done specifically for that game, right? But for another game, you just might need someone sitting down on a chair,
Right.
right? And it's not possible today to reuse that, right? Plus, if you would combine that with the markerless motion capture, then you take YouTube. That's kind of the biggest library of motion capture that exists in the world. So how do you take advantage of that? How do can you take videos publicly available and uh, create animations out of those motions which are on those videos.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And so we talked a little bit about the gaming sector. I know we also kind of have our eye on healthcare. I guess a good bridge to that would be that motion capture can also be useful in healthcare, right?
Yeah, it's something we've considered, and actually we came across that, like, coincidentally, right? Due to a client specifying a telemedicine case. And I think in healthcare, remote diagnostics is going to be an interesting area, and I think it's going to be a growing area. So motion or diagnostics of motion in essence is quite important for finding out various types of problems, right? If it's, I don't know, back pain, if it's leg pain. So if you're at a
It's
doctor's, then typically the doctor will tell you to walk from the door to him, and he would recognize in based on his experience that something could be potentially wrong with you, right? So it's just maybe the possibility of automating that, and we're looking at the possibility of taking learnings out of the gaming industry and then using them in the healthcare.
So are we going to see like grandma in a full motion capture suit walking around to see if she has a bad hip, or like how does the practical application go? Is there going to be like hardware that patients would need, or would it all be through video?
No, it has to be all through video. It has to be simplified for the patients at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So when that markerless motion capture is available, then I think you can practically use the same technology to diagnose um, patients, right, remotely. So it has to be simple, right, especially when it comes to medicine.
Yeah. And is there any other use cases for machine learning in healthcare? There's other use cases for
Oh yeah,
machine learning in healthcare. Yeah.
there are.
So
I,
what are some of the other ones we have our eye on?
there are plenty, right? I mean, we try to, and I've been saying this for quite some time, right? So we've been trying to um, get stuff done in the real world, right? So our real focus is not, let's say, the too futuristic stuff.
Yeah.
So some genome analyzing is a bit far away from us right now, but you never know. But at the end of the day, I think what patients would benefit really from is kind of better organization, processing better electronic health records. You go to a doctor's today, and they're still pulling your file out of a cabinet where you have tons of papers, right? Half of the papers yourself as a patient you've never seen,
Yeah.
right? Because it's just doctors handing out them between each other. It's in a language that you don't understand very much, and I understand why it's this way, but I'm not sure if it's benefiting the patients in any way. So can we? Well, it's not really about, at the end of the day, too much machine learning. I mean, it's just maybe data processing in the first place, right? So making your data organized, making it clear what type of data is being processed and trying to somehow standardize that, right? It's not an easy task by any way, but I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, 'cause, I remember, one of our content series, "Learn with Me." Yeah, where we have the data engineers explain things to me so that I can maybe present them in a more business language. They were talking about how health records are not like a standardized form, right? So if you're in a different country or even like a different city or a different hospital,
Hmm.
they might put all of your information, like your symptoms you reported, or even your
Right.
personal information. It could be like on any kind of form they want, right? So like it'd be really hard initially for it to be automated because it's not just like taking the name section and pulling the name or like right. So there's something called, I think, like entity recognition. Is that something that is helpful for that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, entity recognition is something that we've been working on for quite some time. It's especially valuable in these situations where you need to extract like key information, which at the end of the day is common, but it's like like you mentioned, it's in various formats and shapes, and um, for the machine to recognize if that's the entity, if it's, I don't know, an ID of some sort, or if it's a specific piece of information, or it can be things like a typical measurement of some sort, so blood pressure.
Hmm.
So these extracting these out of unstructured documents and structuring them can be valuable, not just for the fact that you have your data in order, but then you can further analyze that information and uh, sort of have a better feeling. If you're a hospital, you can have a better feeling of what sort of patients you are coming to your hospital, what sort of problems, what's their like history with you, what's their
Yeah.
journey, right? So, and based on that, you can make improvements to your care.
Yeah, yeah, and I know we picked we started looking at gaming because of the business, the numbers, and the industry and stuff. Is it kind of the same thing with healthcare? Is it like a growing industry or like a
Oh
really?
yeah, well, well, we just have to, just have to look around ourselves. What's happening? What's been happening? Let's say in the last year, right? So I think uh, there's going to be a big shakeup, right, in the healthcare industry. We've seen big challenges, right, when it comes to sudden spikes of um, the need of care, right,
Yeah,
with COVID, and in certain countries. I would say the majority of countries, have probably failed in that sense, right? So, it's just us not prepared enough for that sort of situation, right? So suddenly, in the last couple of years, in the last year, just have a look at the types of websites and call contact center lines and things that have been put out by various teams, and mostly these teams have been working for free, right?
yeah,
Just so that the situation is somehow handled, right? That people ultimately don't die, and I think this is something that needs to be addressed, and yeah, it's going to be it's going to be big changes, I think, in the healthcare sector.
yeah. Okay, and so with these two sectors, healthcare and gaming, does that mean that that's all our company is going to focus on? I mean, I know we've been working with telco, with banks. I mean, are we still going to do business with these kind of companies, or are we going to be hyper focused on only these two industries?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, at the sorry, at the end of the day, if a mobile operator approaches us and wants to do a use case in regards to machine learning, then we're happy to do so, right? Um, what we're doing now is just the focus is kind of taking our marketing efforts and the budget that we have for approaching customers and focusing in areas which we think will be long term very interesting from us, right? So it's not saying that we won't do telco. It's not saying that we won't do banking anymore. It's not saying we won't do retail and other places that we've been. Um, it's just our biggest investment is going to probably go into healthcare, then gaming, and we'll see what comes out of that, right? But I think
Yeah,
at the end of the day, we want to do stuff which we're proud of and which would resonate with us, and which would have some sort of effect on our families. Not saying not saying our families are all gamers. By no means. We're not sitting here and playing RPG games every day or something like that. But the healthcare is important for me, and I think the gaming is kind of the vessel which would help us with the time that we get into healthcare, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not something that we will happen overnight. In terms of use cases, in terms of customers approach, we understand that it's going to be a slower process than maybe with other customers that we had in the past.
Yeah, and it for these industries, are we mostly looking inside the Czech Republic? We're a Czech company, right? But we're doing all our marketing in English, so it kind of seems like our goal is to kind of not just look inside the Czech Republic, but kind of international. Does that kind of line up with what you're thinking?
Yeah, well, I mean, people will probably be surprised that the majority of our customers are actually not Czech. So we're kind of already there in terms of international expansion. We're in a couple of countries. I mean, you take the US, France, Singapore, just to name a few. But yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity is very big. So you would slow down your growth if you would just focus on one specific country. It may be easier, but that's not what we're about.
Yeah, that rings true. So, all right. So we're gonna wrap it up. So, like, final question, something fun. So, if you had like a dream game that you could work on or do motion capture algorithms for, what would be your game of choice? Is it the FIFA one?
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing FIFA as far as I remember. I mean, I'm not that old, but I still remember FIFA '96, and I think in my early days I played probably FIFA '98 the most, right? So very simple game, at the end of the day, and the way the game has progressed since then, is just amazing. But I always come back to it, and as I played quite a lot of football in the past myself, so it's for me natural to have that as a favorite. And if we would have the opportunity to work with EA Sports on machine learning use cases, then that would be really cool.
That would be really cool for multiple reasons.
Precisely.
Cool, man. So hopefully this was helpful for people. It kind of explained why we have a bunch of motion capture things on our account. And yeah, I look forward to more of these, because as we look for more ways that we can to bring content and to share information with you guys, we're really looking into more video and audio stuff. So this is kind of our first experiment with that. So if you're watching, thank you so much. And Johnny, thank you so much. And take it easy.
Yep. Thank you. Take care.